Before we jump into solving proportions, we need to do a little mini lesson on solving for an unknown variable through division. And we're going to do that by using the division property of equality. Now, we are going to be looking at equations. Equations are math statements that have an equal sign. For instance, 3 plus 7 equals 10. Here we have the equal sign. What that means is that the left side is going to be equivalent to the right side. Now, sometimes in our equation, we have an unknown variable, okay? That, for instance, we might have 2 plus n equals 7. And in this case, we have to figure out what the value of n is. Now, we're not going to do this particular problem because it's not going to relate to proportions, but you will see more of this type of math as you continue on in your math journey. Let's look specifically at the problems we're going to see for proportions. These types of problems are going to have a number multiplied to a variable, which we're going to call n. And on the other side of equal sign is going to be an amount, say 10. Now, how we would interpret this is 2 times a number equals 10. And if we remember that the equal sign tells us that both sides of the equal sign are going to represent the same amount, then we can determine what this n is by doing the opposite of multiplication. So instead of 2 times n, we're going to divide by 2. Now, because we don't want to change the value of this equation, we must also divide the other side by the same amount. Now we have 2n divided by 2 equals 10 divided by 2. To solve for n, we're going to do the division. 2n divided by 2 is going to become n, because 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 1n is the same thing as n. So these 2's are going to cancel, and we're left with n. Now 10 divided by 2 is going to give me 5. Now I've solved for n. The next thing that you should do is to plug in that 5 where n is, just to make sure you've done the math correctly. So 2 times 5, does that equal 10? Yes, it does. So 10 equals 10. This is a true statement or a true equation. That means our solution is 5. And that's basically how you would solve for an unknown through division. But let's go ahead and do 2 more problems. Let's say we have 5n equals 115, and let's say we have 3n equals 11. Now, in this example, I know that I'm going to come up with a whole number, because when I divide 5 into 115, notice that last digit ends in 5. So that's going to be a nice clean division. But let's set this up. Remember, this is 5 times n equals 115. To solve for the unknown variable n, I'm going to do the opposite of multiplication. I'm going to divide. and I'm going to divide by the number that is multiplied to n, in this case 5. I do that so I can eventually cancel those out and get n. If I do one operation on one side, I must do it again on the other side. So now these cancel. I get n equals, and I need to do a little thinking here. 5 will go into 11 2 times with 1 left over. 5 goes into 15 3 times. Now if I were to double check, 23 times 5, that's going to be 15. 10 plus 1 is 11. So yes, that is my solution. Let's go ahead and look at this one. Now I know that a 3 won't go into 11, but it will go into it some amount. So I need to figure out that amount. Again, this is 3 times n. So I'm going to do the opposite or the inverse operation, which is divide by 3, divide by 3. These are going to cancel, and I'm left with n. Now, I know that even though this is a division problem, I have a couple of choices. I can think about this as an improper fraction and convert it to a mixed number. In that case, 3 goes into 11 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. 11 take away 9 is 2. So 3 2/3. The other option is to divide it and come up with a decimal answer. 3 goes into 3, or 11, 3 times, and add a decimal and a 0. That's going to go in 6 times, which is going to be 18. 18 take away, or 20 take away 18 is going to give me 2. So it's going to keep repeating. So n equals 3 2/3, or 3 6/10 with a repeating line above that 6. To check my answer, it might be easier to use this number here. Let's go ahead and do that. So I know that 3 times n equals 11. So instead of n, I'm going to write 3 times 3 2/3. Does this equal 11? Well, 3 times 3 is 9, times 2 is 11/3. So that's going to be 3 over 1 times 11/3. These 3's will cancel, and I'm left with 11. So yes, 11 will equal 11. So this will be my solution. Again, you will see more of these types of problems in Math 2, or if you take more math on campus. But for now, to solve proportions, this process will come in handy.